Have you ever wondered why, no matter how many times you promise yourself never again, you find yourself in the same relationship, just with a different face? The details might change. Maybe one was an artist who couldn't commit, and the next was an executive who was emotionally distant. But the feeling is identical, that familiar ache of not being enough, of trying to earn a love that is always just out of reach. It. You heal for a while, you feel stronger, and then, almost as if by some magnetic force, you are pulled right back into the same dynamic. Many women believe this is a matter of bad luck, or that they simply have a type. They blame the world, they blame the men, or worse, they blame themselves in a way that creates shame but no real change. But what if I told you that this pattern is not a curse? What if it's not a sign that you are broken, but a sign that a deeper part of you is trying to speak to you? In the world of psychology, there's an understanding that we don't just stumble into these situations by accident. The human mind is a powerful, pattern-seeking organism. It gravitates toward what is familiar, even if that familiarity is rooted in pain. The repeating relationship in your life is a message, an echo from your inner world pointing to a part of yourself that has been ignored, wounded, or left behind. The toxic person you keep dating is, in a profound way, a messenger. And the message they carry is not about them, it's about you. You might be thinking, how can this person who hurts me be a messenger for my own good? It's a difficult idea to accept, because it asks you to shift the focus from them to yourself. Consider this. The very qualities in that person that both attract and wound you are often a mirror for something inside of you that you have yet to face. This is not about blame, this is about deep, radical self-awareness. For example, do you find yourself drawn to partners who are emotionally unavailable? You might spend years trying to break down their walls, believing that if you could just get them to open up, you would finally feel loved and secure. You see the problem as their inability to connect. But let's turn the mirror around. In your relentless focus on their emotional state, are you perhaps avoiding your own? By making them the project, you never have to sit in the uncomfortable silence and ask what you truly feel, what you truly need. Their unavailability becomes a convenient and all-consuming distraction from your unavailability to yourself. You are so busy tending to their inner world that you have abandoned your own. The emptiness you feel is not just from their lack of love, it's from your own self-abandonment. This person is not your problem. They are a symptom of a deeper disconnect from your own emotional core. They are the perfect embodiment of the distance you keep from your own soul. This is why traditional dating advice so often fails. It tells you to set better boundaries or look for red flags, but it doesn't address the magnetic pull that makes you ignore the red flags in the first place. You can have a checklist of all the right qualities, but if your inner world is unconsciously seeking a familiar wound to reenact, you will find a way to choose the person who fits the pattern. The only way to break this cycle is to stop looking outward and begin a journey inward. This is where the practice of abstinence becomes not a form of deprivation, but the most powerful tool for transformation you can possess. When you make a conscious choice to step away from romantic and sexual entanglement, you are not closing yourself off from love. You are creating a sacred space, a space of quiet. In this quiet, the noise of seeking validation, the drama of the chase, and the anxiety of waiting for a text message all fade away. And what rises to the surface is you. All the feelings you were using relationships to numb or escape from will begin to surface. The loneliness, the fear of being unworthy, the deep-seated belief that you need someone else to be whole. It is uncomfortable, yes, it can be painful. But for the first time, you are not running. You are finally meeting yourself. This is the beginning of real power. Power that doesn't come from controlling someone else or getting them to love you, but from understanding your own inner landscape. Abstinence allows you to stop looking at the mirror, the other person, and to finally see your own reflection. It asks you to sit with the question, what is this pattern trying to teach me? What part of me have I been refusing to see? If you constantly attract chaos, where have you suppressed your own need for freedom or your fear of unpredictability? If you always attract someone you need to fix, what part of you feels broken and is desperately seeking to heal itself by healing another? The person you keep dating is a clue. They are a breadcrumb trail leading you back to the lost parts of yourself. The cycle will only as long as you refuse to follow it home, to the core of who you are. The pain is not the point, it is the path. And the journey begins the moment you decide to stop walking toward another person and start walking toward yourself. As you begin this journey of walking toward yourself, the quiet you've created can feel deafening at first. The space that was once filled with the emotional drama of a turbulent relationship is now empty, and in that emptiness, a new kind of challenge arises. You will start to notice the parts of yourself that you have long tried to ignore. These are not necessarily your flaws or weaknesses. In fact, they are often your greatest untapped strengths, which you were taught to see as unacceptable. This collection of disowned traits, your raw ambition, your righteous anger, your unapologetic desires, your profound vulnerability, forms what the psychologist Carl Jung called the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is simply everything about yourself that you have been taught to hide in order to be loved, accepted, or safe. Now consider the person you were last drawn to, the one who fit that painful, repeating pattern. What was it about them that was so magnetic? Look past the superficial charm and focus on the energy they embodied. Were they fiercely independent, maybe to the point of being unreliable? Were they deeply creative but emotionally chaotic? Were they powerful and confident, but also controlling? Very often we find that the people we are most compulsively drawn to are the ones who are living out the parts of our own shadow that we have repressed. The attraction feels so intense, so destined, because on a deep, unconscious level, your psyche is screaming for wholeness. It sees its missing piece walking around in the world, embodied by another person, and it desperately wants to reclaim it. This is a profound and often misunderstood dynamic. For example, a woman who is raised to be a good girl, always accommodating, always putting others first, never making waves, might find herself irresistibly attracted to a man who is selfish, rebellious, and unapologetically follows his own desires. Consciously, she might tell herself she can fix him, or that his confidence is attractive. But unconsciously, she is drawn to him because he is expressing the self-interest and freedom she was forced to bury within herself. The relationship becomes a subconscious attempt to reconnect with her own disowned shadow. She isn't truly in love with him. She is in love with the reflection of her own lost freedom. She doesn't want to be him, but she yearns for the part of herself that he represents. This is why these relationships are so intoxicating and ultimately so destructive. You are not connecting with a whole person. You are clinging to a projection of your own missing parts. You might try to change them, to soften their hard edges, which is really a symbolic attempt to integrate your shadow in a more palatable way, without having to do the terrifying work of owning it yourself. Or you might lose yourself completely, becoming a satellite to their world, hoping that by proximity, some of their shadow energy will rub off on you. In either case, the outcome is the same. You abandon yourself. The tragic irony is that the very thing you are seeking, wholeness, is the one thing the relationship guarantees you will never find because it is entirely dependent on an external source. This is where the practice of abstinence becomes a crucible for your transformation. When you remove the other person, you remove the screen onto which you were projecting your shadow. You can no longer outsource your rebellion, your ambition, or your desire. The longing for those qualities doesn't just disappear. Instead, it turns inward. You are now left alone with the raw energy of your own disowned self. The anger you saw as unladylike begins to bubble up, not as destructive rage, but as a clear signal that your boundaries have been violated. The ambition you were taught was too aggressive starts to whisper, not as a demand for power over others, but as a deep yearning to build a life that is authentically yours. This process requires immense courage. It means allowing yourself to feel the feelings you were told were wrong. It means looking at your darker impulses not as things to be ashamed of, but as sources of immense power and information. Your anger is a guardian of your boundaries. Your sadness is a testament to what you have loved and lost. Your ambition is the architect of your future. The toxic person was never the source of these qualities. They were merely a signpost pointing back to the treasure you buried inside your own heart. By stepping away from them, you are finally giving yourself the chance to stop admiring the map and begin digging for the gold. You are learning that you do not need to find a partner who is strong, because you are discovering the strength within yourself. You do not need a partner who is free, because you are learning to unchain your own soul. The ultimate goal is not to find someone who completes you, but to become so complete within yourself that you attract someone who is equally whole. As you sit in this space of abstinence, you begin to realize that the patterns you've repeated in relationships are not isolated incidents. They are deeply connected to the stories you've been telling yourself for your entire life, often stories that were handed to you in childhood. This is where we move beyond just recognizing your shadow and start to understand its origin. The human psyche is shaped by its earliest experiences. The ways in which we learn to receive love, approval, and safety as children become the unconscious blueprint for our adult relationships. If you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, where you had to be the smart one, the quiet one, the perfect one to earn affection, you may have learned a devastating equation: love equals performance. This unconscious belief is a powerful driver of attraction. It's the reason you might find yourself drawn to partners who are critical, demanding, or emotionally distant. On the surface, you might think you are simply drawn to a challenge or to someone with high standards. But what is really happening is that your inner child is seeking a familiar stage upon which to perform. It is trying over and over again to finally win the unwinnable game it was taught as a child. If I can just be good enough, smart enough, or beautiful enough, this person will finally give me the unconditional love I always craved. The toxic relationship becomes a desperate attempt to heal an old wound by reenacting it. You become the emotional contortionist, twisting yourself into whatever shape you think they need you to be. You learn to anticipate their moods, to read the subtle shifts in their tone of voice, to walk on eggshells to avoid triggering their disapproval. Your entire sense of self becomes tied to their validation. A good day is a day they smile at you. A bad day is a day you feel their withdrawal. You are living in a state of constant low-grade anxiety, a prisoner to their emotional whims. This is not love, it is a form of emotional servitude. You have mistaken the exhausting work of earning someone's approval for the sacred connection of genuine intimacy. Let's be very clear, this is not your fault. This is a survival mechanism that you learned when you were young and vulnerable. The problem is that this mechanism, which once helped you navigate a difficult childhood environment, is now sabotaging your chance at adult happiness. It keeps you trapped in a cycle of seeking validation from people who are fundamentally incapable of giving it, because their role in your psychological drama is to be the withholding figure, the one whose approval you can never quite secure. They are perfectly cast for the part your psyche needs them to play. Abstinence in this context is a radical act of rebellion against this lifelong pattern. By removing the audience, the romantic partner, you take away the stage. There is no one left to perform for. There is no one to please, no one to impress, no one whose approval you need to win. At first, this can feel terrifyingly disorienting. Who are you when you are not trying to be what someone else wants? The silence that follows is not empty. It is filled with the opportunity to ask yourself, for the first time in a long time, what you truly want. What do you think? How do you feel? This is the beginning of building what psychologists call a solid sense of self, or what ancient philosophers like Marcus Aurelius might refer to as the inner citadel. It is an unshakable core of self-worth that does not depend on external validation. It is the knowing, deep in your bones, that you are worthy of love and respect simply because you exist, not because you have earned it. Building this inner citadel is a slow and deliberate process. It involves listening to your own inner voice, honoring your own feelings, and learning to give yourself the approval you were always seeking from others. It's about becoming your own source of warmth, your own safe harbor. When you start to cultivate this inner security, something remarkable happens. The magnetic pull of the critical, unavailable partner begins to fade. Their withholding behavior no longer feels like an exciting challenge. It feels draining and unattractive. Their criticism no longer sounds like a roadmap to self-improvement. It sounds like noise. You start to see the pattern not as a romantic tragedy, but as a tiresome and outdated script you are no longer willing to read from. You are not just healing from a breakup. You are healing from a lifetime of believing your worth was up for negotiation. This is the profound gift of abstinence. It starves the part of you that thrives on external validation and nourishes the part of you that is rooted in unconditional self-love. You stop looking for a home in another person because you are finally building one within yourself. As you to build this inner home, you will inevitably come face to face with one of the most powerful forces that drives unhealthy relationship patterns: the fear of being alone. For many women, this fear is a deep, primal terror. It's not just a preference for companionship, it's a core belief that to be alone is to be unwanted, invisible, or a failure. This belief is often reinforced by a society that still places immense value on a woman's relationship status as a measure of her worth. From a young age, the narrative is clear. A happy ing involves being chosen by a partner. And so, the prospect of being truly, sovereignly alone can feel like a personal indictment. This fear is the fuel that keeps the cycle of toxic relationships going. It's the voice that whispers, "This is better than nothing." It's the panic that sets in on a Saturday night when you have no plans. It's the reason you might lower your standards, ignore red flags, and accept treatment you know you don't deserve, all to avoid the perceived emptiness of solitude. The fear of being alone makes you a hostage. It convinces you that a bad connection is preferable to no connection at all, that the pain of a familiar unhappiness is safer than the uncertainty of standing on your own. You cling to a sinking ship because you are terrified of the open water, not realizing that you know how to swim. When you choose abstinence, you are making a conscious decision to face this fear head on. You are willingly stepping into the very experience you have spent your life trying to avoid. This is not about white-knuckling your way through loneliness. It is about fundamentally reframing your relationship with solitude. The Stoic philosophers spoke of the importance of being able to find contentment within oneself, regardless of external circumstances. They understood that true freedom comes not from having everything you want, but from wanting what you already have, including your own company. Abstinence is your training ground for this kind of inner freedom. During this period, you will learn to distinguish between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is a painful feeling of lack, a sense of being disconnected and incomplete. Solitude, on the other hand, is a state of being. It is a rich, fulfilling experience of being with yourself. It is the space where you can hear your own thoughts without the filter of someone else's opinion. It is the quiet in which you can rediscover your own passions, hobbies, and interests, the parts of you that may have been pushed aside to make room for a partner's needs. It is the sanctuary where you can finally get to know the person you have been living with your entire life. You might start by taking yourself out on dates. Go to the museum you've always wanted to visit, eat at the restaurant you've been curious about, take a walk in the park without headphones, simply observing the world around you. At first, this may feel awkward or uncomfortable. You might feel the imagined stares of others, the old story of the sad single woman playing in your head. But as you persist, something shifts. You begin to enjoy your own company. You start to trust your own instincts. You realize that you are a fascinating, complex, and wonderful person to spend time with. The fear of being alone is slowly replaced by a deep appreciation for your own presence. This transformation is not just about becoming more independent. It has a profound impact on your future relationships. When you are no longer afraid of being alone, you begin to choose partners from a place of want, not need. You are not looking for someone to fill a void, because there is no void. You are not seeking a rescue from your own life, because you have built a life you love. Your standards naturally rise not because you are becoming picky, but because you are no longer willing to trade your inner peace for the mere presence of another person. You start to see that a relationship that costs you your solitude, your peace of mind, and your connection to yourself is far too expensive. The fear of being alone keeps you searching for a savior. The embrace of solitude turns you into your own hero. The woman who has made peace with her own company is a sovereign being. She does not enter a relationship to be completed, but to share her completeness. Her energy is not desperate or clinging. It is calm, centered, and whole. She is not looking for a man to build her a world. She has already built her own. She is simply looking for someone worthy of being invited in. As you become more comfortable in your solitude, you create the space to understand another crucial dynamic at play: the balance of your inner energies. The psychologist Carl Jung proposed that every person, regardless of their gear, possesses both masculine and feminine energies within them. He called these the anima, the inner feminine in a man, and the animus, the inner masculine in a woman. In our simplified terms, think of this as a spectrum of energies. Feminine energy is often associated with qualities like nurturing, intuition, collaboration, creativity, and being receptive. Masculine energy is associated with qualities like action, logic, structure, protection, and direction. A healthy, whole person has a balanced and integrated relationship with both of these internal forces. However, many of us are raised to overdevelop one and suppress the other. Women, in particular, are often socialized to embody their feminine energy while disowning their masculine. You might have been taught that being direct, assertive, or decisive was bossy or unfeminine. You learned to be receptive to others' plans, but not to make your own. You became skilled at nurturing others, but neglected to build a structure for your own life. When your inner masculine energy is underdeveloped and disowned, you will unconsciously seek it outside of yourself. You will be drawn to a partner who can provide the direction, stability, and decisiveness that you feel you lack. This is a classic setup for a codependent relationship. You project your unowned masculine energy onto a man, and he becomes the embodiment of your ability to act in the world. He makes the decisions, he sets the course, he provides the feeling of safety and structure. You, in turn, provide the nurturing, the emotional support, the intuitive guidance. On the surface, it might even feel like a perfect partnership. You complement each other. But this is a fragile and ultimately disempowering arrangement. You are not two whole people coming together. You are two halves leaning on each other to stand. The problem with this dynamic is that you become completely dependent on him for your sense of direction and security. Without him, you feel lost, incapable of making decisions, and unable to move forward. Your life becomes a reflection of his goals, his ambitions, his desires. You might even find that you lose touch with your own dreams as your energy is so consumed with supporting his. The intense attraction you feel is not for him as a person, but for the masculine energy he represents, the very energy that lies dormant and untapped within you. The relationship becomes a crutch, preventing you from developing your own inner strength and capacity for action. This is why the period of abstinence is so critical for your development. When you are on your own, you have no choice but to activate your own inner masculine energy. You must become your own provider of structure, your own decision maker, your own protector. You learn to manage your finances, to fix things around the house, to plan your future. You stop waiting for someone to come along and give your life direction. You pick up the map and compass and chart your own course. This is not about becoming like a man or losing your femininity. It is about becoming a whole woman. It is about integrating these powerful, action-oriented qualities into your being so that you can bring your creative, intuitive, feminine gifts into the world with purpose and direction. As you cultivate this inner balance, your attractions will begin to shift dramatically. A man who is overly controlling or domineering, who once might have seemed strong and decisive, will now feel stifling. His need to be in charge will no longer feel like a comfort, but an infringement on your own sovereignty. You will no longer be drawn to a man to be your rock. You have become your own mountain. Instead, you will find yourself attracted to a man who has a healthy relationship with his own inner feminine energy, a man who is not afraid of his emotions, who values intuition, and who is capable of genuine partnership and collaboration. You will begin to seek a partner who complements you, not one who completes you. The goal is to find someone who mirrors your own wholeness, not someone who patches up your perceived deficiencies. When you have cultivated both your inner feminine and masculine energies, you can engage in a relationship as an equal. You can be soft and strong, intuitive and logical, receptive and decisive. You move from seeking a parent figure in a partner to seeking a true peer. The love you will then be capable of giving and receiving will not be based on dependency or need, but on the joyful and conscious choice of two sovereign individuals who have decided to walk their paths together. Now that you have faced your shadow, healed the wounds of your inner child, embraced solitude, and begun to balance your inner energies, you are entering the final and most empowering phase of this journey. This is where you move from a state of reactive healing to one of conscious creation. You are no longer just fixing what was broken, you are building what is to come. The central theme of this new chapter is emotional freedom, the ability to choose your responses rather than being controlled by your impulses, past hurts, or unconscious patterns. It is the ultimate expression of personal power. For most of your life, your attractions have likely been driven by a sense of urgency and compulsion. You would meet someone and feel an immediate, overwhelming spark or chemistry. This feeling was often so intense that it felt like destiny, like a force beyond your control. You mistook the anxiety of the unknown, the thrill of the chase, and the familiar sting of an old wound being touched for the signs of true love. These relationships were characterized by dramatic highs and devastating lows. The emotional roller coaster felt addictive, and you came to believe that this kind of intensity was the hallmark of a great romance. Through your journey of abstinence and self-reflection, you have come to understand a profound truth. What you thought was a spark was often the friction of two unhealed parts of yourselves grinding against each other. It was the alarming jolt of your trauma, recognizing a familiar pattern in another person. It was the desperate cry of your unmet needs projecting onto a potential savior. This intense, immediate chemistry was not a sign of soulmate connection. It was a warning signal from your intuition, telling you that you were about to repeat a painful lesson you had not yet learned. As you become more emotionally centered and self-aware, the nature of attraction itself begins to change. It becomes quieter, calmer, and more deliberate. Instead of a volatile spark, you begin to feel a slow, steady burn. You are no longer drawn to chaos and intensity. Instead, you find yourself attracted to qualities like consistency, kindness, emotional stability, and integrity. These may be the very qualities you once dismissed as boring because they did not activate your old wound patterns. You are no longer looking for a project to fix or a storm to survive. You are looking for a harbor to rest in. This shift is a direct result of the inner peace you have cultivated. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by events, but by the views which we take of them. You have learned to regulate your own emotional state, to find peace within yourself regardless of external circumstances. You no longer need another person to be your source of excitement or your distraction from inner turmoil. Because you have found peace within, you now value peace without. A partner who creates drama, who is inconsistent, or who plays mind games is no longer intriguing. They are simply disruptive to the sanctuary you have so carefully built within yourself. This is the essence of emotional freedom. It is the ability to meet someone and not be swept away by compulsive attraction. It is the power to observe your feelings without being enslaved by them. You can feel an initial pull towards someone and have the wisdom to pause, to reflect, and to ask, is this attraction coming from a place of health and wholeness, or is it the echo of an old pattern? You have the clarity to assess whether a person's character, values, and behavior align with the life you want to create, rather than being blinded by a superficial and fleeting sense of chemistry. You are no longer a passenger on the wild ride of your emotions. You are the driver. You choose your destination. This doesn't mean you become cold or unfeeling. On the contrary, your capacity for love deepens because it is no longer entangled with need, fear, or a desperate desire for validation. The love you now have to offer is a conscious, deliberate gift, not a transaction to get your own needs met. You can love someone for who they are, not for who you need them to be. And you will only choose to love someone who is capable of loving you in the same way, as a whole, sovereign, and complete individual. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.